right, good morning, everyone. Let's go and get started on the do now. So what was your favorite thing that you did this weekend? And what was I gonna say? Find two numbers that multiply to give you 6 and then add to equal -1. Multiply to equal -6 and add to equal -1. And then find two numbers that multiply to give you +6 and add to give you 5. So let's go ahead and take 3 minutes to complete that. So type your answer in the chat. Went bowling, slept. All right, 30 more seconds, 30 more seconds. Get your answers in the chat. What was your favorite thing you did this weekend? Played basketball, awesome. You didn't have a favorite thing, JJ? You just had so many things that were awesome. Can't choose one. You got sleep, cool. All right, for today's do now, I'm actually gonna take volunteers. So the first question, find two numbers that multiply to equal -6 and add to be -1. Go ahead and type in the chat, type me if you would like to answer number 2. Type in me if you wanna answer number 2. All right, Jonathan, what do you have?
Is it -3 times 2?
Yes, -3 times 2 would equal -6. -3 plus 2 would give you -1. Good job. All right, number 3, find two numbers that multiply to give you +6 and add to give you +5. Go ahead and type in me if you want to answer that question. All right, Noah, all yours.
2 and 3.
2 and 3, yes. All right, good job, Jonathan and Noah. Let's go ahead and get started with our good things today. So today's good things are gonna come from Tia, Anam, and Bo-Ray. So Tia, go ahead and get started. What's your good thing?
I guess I got up in the morning.
Awesome. That's a great thing. It's really hard, especially after a 3-day weekend. Thanks for sharing. Anam, what's your good thing?
I got to go to Chicago over the weekend.
Awesome. What's in Chicago?
Nothing. All of us cousins just made a plan to hang out and stuff.
Very cool. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. And then, Bo-Ray, what's your good thing? Sorry, I couldn't hear you. One more time. Cool. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. My good thing is that I get to play tennis today, and I'm excited. I always enjoy playing tennis. If you don't have your video on, just a quick reminder, go ahead and turn your video on. If you're having some technical issues, message me privately. But if I have not heard from you for whatever reason, make sure to turn your video on. All right, let's get started with today's notes. So just as a reminder, you should have turned in your quiz on Friday. Are there any questions or logistical issues with the quiz?
I ain't took no video.
Okay, cool. That means that we are starting a new unit today, which means that all your assignments from chapter 2 are due tonight at 11:59 p.m. if you haven't turned them in already. So make sure to do that. And then if you do turn in a late assignment, you need to send me an email with the names of the assignments. I got a couple over this weekend and I haven't put them in yet, but just make sure that you keep sending those emails. If you did turn in a late assignment, today is the last day to make that happen. What else was I going to tell you guys before we got started? Oh, today's office hours are going to be right after school. So from 3:15 to 3:45. So if you do have any questions, you can log into office hours. I'll send you all a message on Canvas to remind you, just because we didn't get a chance to do it yesterday. So I am shifting it to today if anyone wants to join for those. Before we get started, my last announcement, Nick, you reminded me of this because of your message. So thank you for that. Really fun trick that I learned this weekend, courtesy of my fellow math teacher, Mrs. Denning. Let's see, where is it? Hang on one second. I lost it. Okay, there we go. All right, so if you go to my Canvas page, there's a link to this really awesome resource that she posted, which basically shows you how you can edit a PDF directly on your computer so you don't have to print out the notes. So especially if you don't have a printer or you've been struggling with printing your notes, if you go all the way down to September 8th and click Helpful Tips Chromebooks, it's going to take you to a YouTube video. And it's only 4 minutes, and she goes through like how to set up the PDF, how to write on your PDF, or how to type it in. And most of my notes are PDF, so you can use this for my notes as well. That way you don't have to print out and write down notes if you don't want to. She also goes over how to split your screen so you can watch the Zoom on one side and then take the notes on the other. And this is also helpful if we're doing a worksheet, because then you can also type directly on the worksheet for the PDF instead of having to write it down on a separate piece of paper and take a picture and upload it. So if you want, I highly suggest watching this video. It could be helpful. If you like the old way that we've been doing things, like go for that. But just wanted to share that resource in case any of you are interested in that. So hopefully, Nick, I know you probably won't have time to watch that video right now, but in the future, you can watch it. And if you don't have your notes, you can just take a picture, or not take a picture, excuse me, just write it down on a paper for today. All right, so new unit today. We're starting chapter 3, which is factoring and solving quadratic equations. So chapter 2 is all about graphing quadratic equations and seeing what the parabola looked like. But this whole chapter is about solving quadratic equations. So when we solve quadratic equations, we're basically looking for our x-intercepts, where my graph is going to cross my x-axis. So there's a bunch of different methods that we use to solve quadratics. This week, we're going to focus on factoring. So what is factoring? You probably had an introduction to it in Algebra 1, and we're just going to build upon what you've already learned in Algebra 1. So today should seem kind of familiar, kind of like a review, and then we're just going to keep building on that to make sure that we get to where we want to go with this unit. When we think about factoring, it's kind of like what you did in the do now today. So if we think about single numbers like 6, for example, when you're talking about factoring, you're looking for two numbers that would multiply to give you 6. So Noah and Jonathan answered that question early in our do now. 2 times 3 would give you 6. 1 times 6 would give you 6. So when I ask you to factor, I'm asking you to break down a number into two numbers that would multiply to give you your original number. That same concept can be extended to a quadratic equation. So a quadratic equation is what we've looked at in the past unit. So for example, we've got ax squared plus bx plus c. That's a quadratic equation because you've got the x squared and it's written in standard form in this case because we've got the a, b, and c. So same idea, you can take that big quadratic equation and then you can break it up into factors. And factors for quadratic equations are usually binomials. What's a binomial? It's just a term with an expression with two terms. So for example, it would be like x plus 2, x minus 1. Those are all examples of a binomial. So you can take a big quadratic equation and then break it down into binomials. So that's what essentially we're doing when we're factoring. We're going to talk about one method of factoring today, which is called sum product, or I like to call it the magic X. So your steps are to factor out a GCF. A GCF stands for greatest common factor. You won't always have a GCF, but you always want to check for it. And then you want to use sum product, aka the magic X. Here are some helpful hints when you are using sum product. When you look at an equation written in standard form, you have 3 variables. You have the A, B, and C. Today we're going to focus on the C and the B because we're dealing only with quadratics that have your A value as 1. So for all of the equations today, there won't be a number in front of the x squared when you go to use the magic X. So the C value is the constant. It's the number at the end without a variable. If your C is positive, then that means your two factors are going to have the same sign, and you're going to add them together to get your B value. So if your C is positive, your signs are going to be the same for the factors, and they're going to add to give you your B value. If your C is negative, your signs are going to be different, and you're going to subtract to get the B value. Also, if your C is negative, the sign of the larger factor is going to be the same as B. So to reiterate, if C is positive, add your factors to get B. If C is negative, subtract your factors to get B. Questions so far? All right, so the magic X, how do we set it up? At the top is A times C, so whatever your A value is multiplied by your C value. Like I said, today your A value is going to be 1, so really you're just going to put the C value at the top. And then your B value goes at the bottom. That's how I remember it, B bottom, B bottom. Okay, so how do we translate all of this information into our magic X? Well, if your C is positive, then that means you're going to have a positive number at the top of your magic X. If your C value is positive and your B value is positive, that's super easy. Your signs are going to be the same for the factors, and they're going to match the B value sign. So they're going to be positive as well. So everything's going to be positive in this one. And we're going to add our factors to get the B value. If your C value is positive and your B value is negative, your signs are going to be the same. They're both going to be negative. And we are going to subtract. Oh, I lied to you. We're going to add again to get the B value. If your C value is negative and your B value is positive, you're going to have one factor that's a positive, one factor that's a negative, and we're going to subtract to get the B value. And if your C value is negative and your B value is negative, we're still going to have different signs, and we're still going to subtract to get the B value. Any questions so far? All right, let's look at number 1. We've got x squared minus 5x plus 6. First step, you want to look for a GCF. So you want to see, is there any number that goes into 1x squared minus 5x plus 6? There's no number that goes into that. So the next step would be to go with the magic x. So you're going to draw your x. Because you don't have a number in front of the x squared, it's just a 1. You don't have to worry about it. You just take the C value, which is 6. And you put it at the top. And then you take the B value, so the number in front of the x, which is -5, and you put it at the bottom. All right, if we look at our cheat sheet, if you have a positive C value and a negative B value, you're going to subtract, or not subtract, why do I keep saying that? You're going to have 2 negative signs. You're going to have 2 negative signs for your factors. So they have to be the same, and they have to match the sign of the B value. And because this is a positive 6, I'm going to add all my factors of 6 to try and get 5. I'm going to ignore that it's a -5 for now because we already took care of that by putting our factor signs in. So the factors of 6, what numbers will multiply to give you 6? Well, 1 times 6 will give you 6, and 2 times 3 will also give you 6. And those are the only options we got. So out of those, you're going to see, okay, which one of these will add, because again, this is a positive 6. You want them to add to give you 5. 1 plus 6 gives you 7, so that won't work. And then 2 plus 3 gives you 5, that will work. So you're going to just fill it in. It doesn't matter where you put them because they're both negative. So it's -2 and -3. Any questions about how we filled in our magic X? Any questions? All right, you're not done. You still have to write these out as binomial. So you look at whatever variable you have. In this case, it's X. So it's going to be X minus 2 and X minus 3. Any questions about number 1? All right, let's look at number 2. 2x squared plus 2x minus 12. So first step, you want to look for a GCF, and your clue is that you have a number in front of your x squared, and you normally shouldn't have a number in front of your x squared for today. So that's a clue that maybe you have a greatest common factor. So you're going to ask yourself, all right, what number goes into 2x squared, 2x, and negative 12? What number goes into all three of those? I'll take a volunteer for this one. So if you want to answer, just go ahead and type in B in the chat, and I'll call on you if you want to tell me what number goes into all three of those. No volunteers? What number goes into 2x squared, 2x, and negative 12? What number would go into all three of those?
2.
2, yep, 2 goes into all of those. So you can take a 2 out, which means that I have to divide every term by 2. So 2x squared divided by 2, it becomes 1x squared, but remember you don't need to write a 1 in front of the x squared. 2x divided by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, but remember you don't need to have the 1 in front of the x. You can just write x. And then negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? All right, now we kind of forget about the 2 and we just focus on the x squared plus x minus 6. So we can go ahead and get our magic x. I'm going to go ahead and call on someone for this next question. What number goes at the top of my x and what number goes at the bottom? What number goes at the top? What number goes at the bottom? What do you think, Nick?
Negative 6 goes on the top.
Mm-hmm.
And then does 1 go on the bottom?
Yeah, so the number in front of your B, if you don't see 1, you can assume that it's 1. So we're looking at a negative at the top, positive at the bottom. So if we look at our cheat sheet, negative at the top, positive at the bottom means that you're going to have 1 positive factor and 1 negative factor. And we're going to subtract the factors of 6 to get 1. So the factors of 6, like we said earlier, are 1 and 6, 2 and 3. Don't worry about positives and negatives right now. Just subtract the larger number minus the smaller number and see if it will give you 1. 6 minus 1 is 5. That won't work. 3 minus 2 is 1. That will work. Your last question is now you have to figure out, because they're different signs, you have to figure out which one's going to be positive and which one's going to be negative. The larger factor has to match the sign of the bottom number. So the bottom number is a positive, which means that your larger factor, 3, also has to be positive, which means that the 2 is going to be the negative. So the larger factor has to match the sign of the bottom number B. Your last step is to change these factors into binomials. You have to keep the 2 from the GCF, and then you're going to look at the variable, which is x. So it's x plus 3 and x minus 2. Any questions? All right, let's look at number 3. We've got x squared minus x minus 20. X squared minus x minus 20. First, look for a GCF. There is no number that goes into x squared, x, and 20, so you don't have a GCF. So you can go straight to the magic x. All right, what goes at the top and what goes at the bottom of my x? What number goes at the top? What number goes at the bottom of my x? What do you have for me, JJ?
So the top top would be, couldn't it be like 5 at the top?
I think you're thinking about the sides, but I just want the top and the bottom, which comes from the equation. So remember, the top number is your C value, the number that's by itself. So what's your C value?
So yeah, the top is 20.
Yep, make sure you keep it
And
negative with it.
you said what?
Make sure that you keep it as a negative because it's minus 20.
And then the bottom is, would it be X?
Well, what's the number in front of the X if you don't see a number?
Is 1.
But because
Negative 1.
a minus, yeah, you want it to be negative 1. Good. All right, so now we know that we have a negative and a negative. So if we look at our cheat sheet, we're going to have different signs. So if you have a negative on top and a negative on bottom, you're going to have a positive factor and a negative factor. And because that top number is negative, you're going to need to subtract the factors of 20 to give you 1. So remember, when you do this part, I don't really think about signs. I just think of this as a 1. And I'm going to say, okay, what do I need to subtract to get me 1? So we've got 1 times 20, 2 times 10, and then 4 times 5. So you're going to look at these and say, okay, which one of these will subtract to give me 1? 20 minus 1 is 19. That won't match. 10 minus 2 is 8. That won't match. But 5 minus 4 is 1. And now your only question is which one's going to be positive and which one's going to be negative. Which one's going to be positive and which one's going to be negative. I'm going to go ahead and call on someone to help me out with this. Which one's positive and which one's negative? What do you have for me, Ida?
The 4 is positive and the 5 is negative.
Yep, and how did you know that?
Because I looked at the thing, the cheat sheet.
Okay, yeah, basically the larger factor, so the 5 has to match the sign of the bottom number. So the bottom's a negative, so the larger factor 5 also has to be negative. So we're going to rewrite this as x plus 4 times x minus 5. Questions on that? All right, the last one, number 4, we've got 3x squared plus 30x plus 72. So anytime you have a trinomial, you want to look for a GCF, and you always want to pay attention to it extra carefully if you have a number in front of your x squared. So in this case, we do. What number goes into 3x squared plus 10x plus 24? You can go ahead and type it in the chat. So what number goes into 3x squared plus 30x plus 72? Type that number in the chat. 3, yes, we got Anam and Henry that said 3 exactly. 3 goes into both of those, or all 3 of those, excuse me. So we can factor out a 3, and then we have to divide every term by 3. So 3x squared divided by 3 is 1x squared, but you don't need the 1. 30x divided by 3, 30 divided by 3 is 10x, and then 72 divided by 3 is 24. All right, so now we can go ahead and fill out the x. So what number goes at the top and what number goes at the bottom of my x? What do you have for me, Elise?
$24.
At the top, and then what goes at the bottom, Elise?
10.
What are the signs of my factors? So tell me if it's going to be positive, positive, negative, negative, or a positive and a negative. What are the signs of my factors? What do you have for me, Naya?
Positive, positive.
Positive, positive, yep, because you got a positive on top, a positive on bottom, so it's going to be two positive factors. 24 is a positive number, so we're going to add the factors of 24. So we've got 1, 24, 2, 12, 3, 8, and 4, 6. So we're going to see which one of those adds to give you 10. 1 plus 24 is 25. That won't work. 2 plus 12 is 14. That won't work. 3 plus 8 is 11. That won't work. But 4 plus 6 is 10. So that will work. It doesn't matter where you put them because they're both positives. Bring down the GCF. So bring down the 3 and then look at the variable. It's an x. So you're going to do x plus 4, x plus 6. And that is your final answer. Any questions about number 4? Does anyone still need this before I change the screen?
Yeah. Can you go up a little bit to the X's? Okay, that's good.
Cool. Anyone else still need this? Okay. Just want to go over the homework today. It's slightly different than normal. So it's going to be on Canvas. It's a worksheet. So if you go back to 9-8 under modules, or if you go to current lesson on the home page. Here we go. All right, you're going to click homework, which is factoring when A equals 1, the worksheet. Where is that? Okay. You're going to download the worksheet. Like I said, if you want to watch that video that Mrs. Denning posted about how to edit a PDF, you can do that and then submit it that way. Or you can print it out, or you can do it on a blank piece of paper. You got 3 different options. Hopefully you'll find one that works for you. It's a little bit different. It's kind of a matching activity. So you factor the problem and then you find which answer choice on the right is correct and will match up with it. So let's say that you factor out number 1 and you get O, x plus 10 times x minus 5. Then at the bottom where it says number 1, you're going to write the letter O. And the reason why you're going to do that is because you can check your work, because the bottom answer should answer the question at the top, which is what do you call a bunch of chickens playing hide and seek? So if at the end it doesn't make sense, your answer is like not a word, then you know that you made a mistake. So that's an easy way that you can check your work. I do expect to see some work, so I don't want to just see matching or like the answer at the bottom, because I want to make sure that you didn't just Google the joke and then get the answer. So I want to at the very least see all the X's. So I want to see how you filled out the X's at the very least in terms of work that you were showing. Any questions about that? Okay, that'll be due tomorrow at 11:59. And just as a reminder, all of your late assignments will also be due tonight at 11:59. Make sure you send me an email. And then I'm also available for office hours today from 3:15 to 3:45. Same link that we have been using for office hours, just a different time this week, given the long weekend. All right, let me just give you your final slide with the homework if it decides to load today. All right, there you go. Factoring when A equals 1 worksheet on Canvas due Wednesday at 11:59. I'm going to stay on the Zoom until the end of the period if you want to get started on your homework with me and I can help you out. If not, then feel free to log off and I will see you tomorrow.